for in the opportunity to talk here. So today I'm going to be talking about predicting novel metabolic pathways through subgraph mining. So we know that metabolic networks have been curated for 100 plus organisms with more than tens of thousands of reactions in many popular databases. These represent the varied repertoire of conversions that existing enzymes can catalyze, and sticking these enzymes into existing organisms through heterologous expression gives us novel pathways in different organisms, and this has been a key driver for metabolic engineering, enabling the retrosynthesis of many novel metabolites. The key questions I ask here today are: how do we predict pathways for the retrosynthesis of compounds, especially novel compounds that are not present in the databases? And can we fill gaps existing in metabolic networks? We know that there are some compounds produced in a particular organism, but we do not know the exact sequence of steps towards that compound. And can we rank these pathways based on biological plausibility? We know that there are many alternate routes in any metabolic network, but which of them are actually preferred by an organism? Right, there are many tools for pathway prediction, very good ones at that. There's RetroPath, PathPred, FMM, Root Search, MRE. But the one catch with most of these methods is that they all rely on the existence of the query molecules in the reaction database. Or they rely on thermodynamic information, which is hard to get, or hand-curated reactant mapping information, such as the KEGG-RPAR and so on. So the main goal for us is, can we build a fully automated engine to predict pathways between two molecules, relying only on the structural information, the chemical structural information? What's our approach? So our software is available from GitHub. So every molecule is represented as a graph. So a molecule itself is a graph, right, in a metabolic network. And we then map reactants and products using subgraph edit distance. This is a sort of key step which helps in the automation. I'll describe all these steps in greater detail as we go on. And then followed by subgraph mining to identify the reaction center, a reaction signature, and so on. And finally, reaction rules, which tell us, why does a particular reaction happen and so on. This is very similar to the high school organic chemistry stuff that people do, where you need to say, how do I produce A from B? And from your memory of Kohl-Schmidt or a Diels-Alder, you say this is how it goes. Instead, now we have access to databases, and we can crystallize the information through graph mining. And we built a reaction rule network, and the advantage that this network gives us is that pathway prediction just becomes pathfinding on this network, and that's like a well-solved problem, right? So how do we convert a molecule to a graph? It's straightforward. Every atom becomes a node, and every bond becomes an edge, right? And double bonds and triple bonds and stereochemistry are represented using edge labels, right? We then go around mining the reaction patterns. So for this, we use subgraph edit distance. This is probably very intuitive. So subgraph edit distance is, many of you may be familiar with edit distance. Subgraph edit distance tells you the minimum number of edits required to convert one graph to the subgraph of another. We now map products that are most similar looking, have maximum number of shared bonds. So in any reaction giving A plus B giving C plus D, or A giving B plus C, we try to map what are the key reactants, right? There's usually going to be glucose, ATP, G6P, ADP. You want to map glucose to G6P and ATP and ADP. So subgraph edit distance helps us get this mapping quite easily. And now we need to quantify the structural change from reactant to product happening in every reaction. So we define what's known as a reaction center. This is the center of all the action that's happening. It's the atom where bonds are being broken and bonds are being formed. We then consider reaction signature, which is sort of, we say, is needed for the reaction to happen. So you need maybe a carbon atom, but this carbon needs to be attached to an alkyl group and maybe an alcohol group for alcohol dehydrogenase to act upon it, right? And then we look at a structural delta, which is a bunch of subgraphs being added and a bunch of subgraphs being lost, essentially bonds that are being broken and formed. There could also be, inter-reaction center changes if there are multiple reaction centers. I'll not get into those details. So if you take a bunch of simple examples like asparagine and aspartate, or ethanol and ethanal, we see what are the, subgraphs that are being removed and the subgraphs that are being added, and so on. right? So essentially, you can go from one side of the reaction to the other by just chopping and adding these subgraphs. And how do we store the reaction rule? We accumulate all this information. You need to have a reaction center. The reaction center has a particular signature. There's a bunch of subgraphs being gained and lost. And there are some cofactors or helper reactants that are involved in this process. So armed with these tools and techniques, definitions, let's go and see how we predict pathways. So how do you apply a reaction rule on a query molecule? Remember, in the whole talk, I'll be going sort of backwards. I'll start from a product molecule and trace the route back to the reactant. So given a target molecule B, let's say hexanal, I want to see if rule L is applicable on B. That will happen if there is a signature in L and a subgraph added in L, which together make up are both a subset of B. Essentially, it needs to have a CHO group or something like that. So to apply the rule, we now remove the added subgraph from the rule. So which means we get rid of the CHO, and then we add the removed subgraph, which was on the left-hand side in the reaction from which we would have learned this. Right? The reaction would have been ROH giving H2OH giving RCHO, and we basically reverse that process here. And each node, we then build a reaction rule network where each node in the network is a reaction rule, and edges connect rules that can be successively applied. Right? And we are guaranteed that if two rules are connected, you can successively apply them based on a lot of things. I'll leave out the details for now. But if we have an edge from L2 to L1, that happens because the product of L1 could be a reactant in the L2 rule. This basically captures the dependencies among reaction rules and how they can be applied one after another. And because of these, the way this has been constructed, pathway prediction now is just pathfinding on this network. So a simple example with just two reactions in the database. Let's just consider a reaction database with these two reactions. There's two different types of aldehyde dehydrogenases, if you will. The first one does propanal to propanoic acid. So there is a loss of a CHO and a gain of a COOH. And then there is ethanol to acetaldehyde, the classic alcohol dehydrogenase. So we have these two reactions in the database. And it's kind of straightforward if you would imagine that you can now infer that there's possibly the same way you can infer that you can convert hexanol to hexanoic acid. But remember that neither of these query molecules are actually in the database, which means you have to find that there is a reaction center corresponding to this chemical behavior, a reaction signature, so this reaction can actually happen. Find the subgraph that is lost and the subgraph that is added, and we basically look for the acid signature and apply the rule on hexanoic acid to generate hexanal as the reactant pair. And now we apply the alcohol dehydrogenase rule to make it into hexanol. Right? So you've essentially reached hexanol. So this concludes the search process. So you now have a resultant pathway wherein you produce hexanoic acid using L2, which was inferred from the propanoic acid rule, and then L1 rule, which connected us back to hexanol, the query molecule, and the process is complete. So this was a very simple example, but it turns out that this works very nicely even in more complex scenarios. But how do you want to now rank biologically plausible pathways higher? I just told you a way for pathfinding on the network. One could use a typical BFS, standard breadth first search strategy, but it turns out that it doesn't scale well and it does not exploit the knowledge of the source and target structures. It turns out that we came up with a very nice heuristic which works very nicely in practice. So what we said was, you optimize the distance to source, at the same time minimizing structural changes. So this is sort of how enzymes operate. They're like, they make a small transformation and do it well. So there are multiple small transformations that get added on and comprise a pathway. So with this definition, we ended up using a best first search approach on the graph. And it turns out that we were able to consistently rank natural pathways higher. And we particularly looked at central carbon metabolism, where there's a lot of potential for confusion because there's like so much interconversion happening there. And it turns out that amongst hundreds of possibilities, we typically picked the correct pathway in the top one or in the top three and so on. And we compare very well against some competing methods. And we also predicted retrosynthetic pathways to known molecules, where we compare, very similar to many of the existing methods. But importantly, we are able to predict retrosynthetic pathways to unseen molecules. So molecules like methyl nicotinate, methyl phenylacetate, and methyl para-anisate are not present in the KEGG. So there's no KEGG ID for those. But they're actually very important compounds in Mycobacterium tuberculosis. And they are volatile organic compounds which are being used for diagnosis and so on. And it turns out that the pathway is not very well known. And we could actually predict the pathway by distilling the chemistry out using our approach. There are some limitations to our approach. For example, we don't consider thermodynamics. And the reason I left out thermodynamics was because it's harder to obtain the accurate information, but integrating thermodynamics would certainly improve the approach for sure. And we are limited by the accuracy of whatever input database we use. So I think it would be best to integrate multiple databases, like say KEGG, RIA, Metapsych, and so on. And it's somewhat difficult to predict even with this approach on much longer reactions, much longer pathways. When it becomes like 5 to 7 steps, the search space just explodes again. So to summarize, we built a completely automated pipeline. There's no manual interference or curation of reactant product pairs or thermodynamics and so on. And we have the backbone of this is an efficient reactant product mapping based on subgraphic distance. And we identified reaction centers and signatures, stuck them into a reaction rule network, which helped us to make this novel queries for even unseen metabolites, metabolites that had not been present in the database. And we defined a new heuristic. This, I think, is actually a very interesting contribution from this piece of work, because this helps us to fish out one single pathway from a lot of possibilities, maybe a few hundreds. Usually, we found the number to be somewhere between 100 to 300 in central metabolism. Our approach is accurate and scalable. I haven't discussed those results for want of time, but you can find them in the preprint. And importantly, we just use the chemical structures and no more. Right? So Arvind was the master student who did most of the work, and this was in collaboration with Dr. Shayan Ranu from computer science. And a preprint of our paper is available from bioRxiv, and you can get the software on GitHub. I thank you for your attention. I'll be happy to take a few questions.
Hello. Very nice talk. Thank you very much. So I have a question. Do you take into account the size of the molecule? Because as soon as I understand, you take any molecule, and if it has the right feature, you just transform it with different reaction rules. But if the rules were constructed from small molecules, and after you want to apply the same rules, the same sequence of rules on a huge molecule, but they have the same features, this molecule will not be able to fit into the enzyme pocket. So
that's true. I think I get your example. So, for example, it would be wrong to apply the rule of alcohol dehydrogenase from ethanol and acetaldehyde to retinol and retinal, which are like bigger compounds. But it turns out that the way we look at the graph, we didn't catch these molecules, because many of the times the reaction happens at a terminus, right? So the size of the molecule is actually limited in that corner. So that's possibly why it's worked, but that's actually a good point. It's something worth looking at. The reactant product mapping actually takes care of that, though. When matching compounds, it makes sure that it doesn't get confused between smaller and larger molecules and so on. But that's a good point, something to
okay, and I have just a second question, sorry. How do you deal with reactions that happen on different sides of the molecules?
Yeah, so I didn't go into the details, but we consider that as well. So you can have multiple reaction centers.
Okay.
So in which case you need to worry about the bond changes happening across reaction centers and so on.
So you have multiple rules to deal with the same molecule?
No, we finally store it as a single rule.
Okay, thank you.
Hello, thank you for your talk. My question is, you started your presentation by pointing out that there are significant gaps still in the KEGG and the Reactome and the Biopsych databases. Most notably, when you compare different organisms, you see very significant coverage. Now that you find new reactions and new pathways, do you try to feed those back into the next revision of KEGG and Biopsych?
Yeah, I mean, I think they can be predicted, but one would always look for some experimental validation. But certainly these predictions can be fed back into Cake and Biosec. But one would want a little more of experimental validation to be 100% sure.
Yeah, but I think some of the databases, at least, and Gary actually made an excellent website for that with an overview of the different pathway databases. So some of those databases actually contain you can assign weights or colors or some indication of what the proof is for an existing for a reaction, whether it's experimentally verified, whether it comes from PPI data, whether it comes from theoretical predictions in this case.
Yeah. So, for example,
I would
pathway
recommend
tools tier 3 is
those
something like that. So, yeah, I think that could definitely be done. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.